I was staring at the text message on my phone, hands trembling so violently I nearly dropped it. The words blurred through my tears. But I had already memorized every single one. Elara, this is your mother. David and I would love for you to come live with us. Lily misses you so much. We've changed. We have a beautiful home now, and we want you to be part of our family again. Please call me. Below that, another message. This time from my father. Your brother Owen just got into MIT. I'm so proud. Rebecca and the twins would love to meet their talented sister. I saw the article about you in the Globe. We should talk about your future. Call me. I felt Sophia's hand on my shoulder as I stood frozen in the middle of my studio, surrounded by dozens of masks hanging on the walls. Each one, a story of pain transformed into art. Me Wolf Mask. The one I had broken and rebuilt with golden seams running through its cracks, stared back at me from its place of honor. That mask knew the truth. It had been there the night, everything shattered. But before I tell you what I did with those messages, before I tell you how this story ends, I need you to do something for me. If you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever been told you weren't enough, if you've ever had to fight to prove your worth to people who should have loved you unconditionally, hit that like button. Subscribe to hear more stories like mine. And please, drop a comment telling me your story. Because I promise you, you're not alone. I read every single one. Now, let me take you back. Back to the night when I was just 14 years old. Standing in the hallway of a house that had never felt like home, watching my entire world implode. It was Halloween night, October 31st. And I should have been out trick-or-treating with friends. But I didn't have friends. I had parents who were too busy destroying each other to notice I existed. An older brother who was the golden child, and a younger sister who was too little to understand. I was in my room, working on a wolf mask for the Halloween party at school. Not a cute wolf. Burafirce. Aggressive one with sharp teeth and wild eyes. Something that could protect itself. Something. Nothing like me. I'd been working on it for 3 weeks, carefully layering papier-mâché, painting intricate details around the eyes, adding real fur scraps I'd saved money to buy from the craft store. It was going to be my masterpiece. The first thing I'd made that I was actually proud of. I'd even sketched out the whole concept in my notebook, written little notes about what each element meant. The sharp teeth were for words I wished I could say. The wild eyes were for the anger I kept buried. The silver streak down the side was for the part of me that still wanted to shine. That's when I heard it. Not just raised voices, which was normal in our house. My parents had been sleeping in separate rooms for 6 months. Owen had started spending most of his time at the library or his friend Marcus's house. Lily would hide in my room sometimes when the yelling got bad, and I'd read to her or let her color in my sketchbooks. But this was different. This was the sound of something breaking. I crept to the top of the stairs, my fingers still covered in papier-mâché paste that was starting to dry and crack on my skin. Through the banister, I could see them. My mother, Elisa, her face twisted with rage. Standing in the middle of our living room, broken dishes littered the floor. A lamp lay shattered against the wall, its shade crumpled like a broken flower. My father, Richard, stood by the fireplace, his face like stone. I sacrificed my entire youth for this God-forsaken family, my mother shrieked. Her voice so full of venom it made my stomach turn. I could have been something. I could have had a career. A life. Instead, I got stuck with 3 kids and a husband who stopped caring years ago. Owen is the only hope I have left. He's brilliant. He's going places. He's coming with me when I leave. You're not taking my son, my father said, his voice dangerously quiet. Owen is 18. He can make his own choices. But Lily needs a father. She's only 7. She stays with me. Rebecca and I will give her a stable home. I felt my heart stop. Rebecca. He'd already moved on. He had someone else. Fine. My mother spat. Keep the baby. But Owen comes with me. He's the only one worth anything in this house anyway. And what about Elara? For a moment, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe one of them actually cared. My father's laugh was bitter. That useless one. She can figure things out on her own. 14 is old enough. Let the state deal with her if she can't manage. My mother didn't even argue. She just shrugged. Like I was a piece of furniture they were deciding to leave behind. Fine. One less mouth to feed. I looked down at the wolf mask in my hands. The fierce, protective wolf I'd spent weeks creating. The wolf that was supposed to make me brave. My hands, still sticky with paste, began to shake. The mask slipped from my fingers and hit the hardwood floor of the hallway with a crack that seemed impossibly loud. It split right down the middle, the two halves separating like a broken promise. Neither of my parents even looked up. They kept arguing about custody arrangements, about who would get the house, about lawyer fees. I stood there, frozen, staring at my broken mask, and something inside me went cold and hard and certain. I didn't cry. I didn't make a sound. I walked back into my room with footsteps that felt like they belonged to someone else. My room was small. Always had been. While Owen had the big corner bedroom with 2 windows and built-in bookshelves, and Lily had the room with the bay window seat and flowered wallpaper. I had what used to be a large closet that my parents had converted. It fit a twin bed, a small dresser, and a desk. But that was it. The walls were covered in my sketches and mask designs. Years of work. Years of trying to make something beautiful out of my invisible existence. I pulled out my backpack and started stuffing clothes into it. Not nice clothes. I didn't have many of those. Owen got new clothes every season. Lily got hand-me-downs from our cousin. I got whatever was left at thrift stores. I packed my 3 pairs of jeans, my 5 t-shirts, my 2 hoodies, my 1 jacket that had a broken zipper I'd never learned to fix. I packed my sketchbook, the good one with the thick paper that I'd bought with birthday money from my grandmother before she died. I packed the small wooden box where I kept my savings from babysitting Lily and the occasional yard work I did for Miss Chen next door. $43. That was it. That was everything I had to my name. I went to Lily's room. She was asleep, her nightlight casting soft shadows on the walls. I wanted to wake her up, to say goodbye, to tell her I loved her. But what good would that do? She was 7. She wouldn't understand. And maybe it was better this way. Maybe she'd forget me faster. I left a note on her pillow. Just 3 words. Love you always. I drew a little heart next to it and a tiny sketch of a cat. Because cats were her favorite. My window faced the backyard. I'd climbed out of it before. Plenty of times when I needed to escape the fighting. When the walls felt too close and the air too thick with anger. The trellis was sturdy, covered in my mother's prized roses. She cared more about those roses than she'd ever cared about me. The thorns caught on my jeans as I climbed down, tearing the fabric, scratching my skin. Ibarra felt it. I dropped to the ground, grabbed my backpack from where I'd thrown it, and looked up at my window one last time. The light was still on. I'd left it on. Let them wonder. Let them eventually realize I was gone. Let them feel something, even if it was just inconvenience. Then I walked away from the house where I'd been born but never truly lived, and I didn't look back. Salem. Massachusetts on Halloween night is magical for most people. The streets were alive with celebration. Children in elaborate costumes ran from house to house, their parents trailing behind with cameras and phones, capturing memories. Jack-o'-lanterns glowed on every porch, their carved faces flickering with candlelight. The smell of cider and donuts drifted from open doors. Somewhere, someone was playing Monster Mash way too loud. I walked through it all like a ghost. Just another person in the crowd. Except everyone else was laughing and I was choking on the realization that I had nowhere to go. I hadn't thought that far ahead. I'd just known I couldn't stay in that house another minute. I found myself at the Salem Common, a big park in the center of town. During the day, it would be filled with tourists and locals, dogs and frisbees. The normal rhythms of life. But now, as the night grew late and the family started heading home, it emptied out. I sat on a bench near the bandstand, hugging my backpack to my chest, watching my breath make little clouds in the cold October air. My phone buzzed. Owen, where are you? Mom and Dad are going crazy. Dad found your window open. I stared at the text. They were going crazy. Not worried. Not scared for me. Just crazy because I'd disrupted their fight, their plans, their neat little division of assets and children. I turned off my phone. Time passed. I'm not sure how long. long enough for the temperature to drop, for my fingers to go numb, for my teeth to start chattering. Long enough for me to seriously consider my options, which weren't many. I could go to my friend Jenna's house. Except Jenna wasn't really a friend, just someone I sat with at lunch sometimes. I could go to school tomorrow and talk to the guidance counselor, Mrs. Patterson, who'd always seemed nice, but who I'd never actually talked to about anything real. I could go back home and pretend I hadn't heard anything. Or I could just sit here and see what happened. That's when the police officer found me. "Hey there. Are you okay?" I looked up to see a police officer standing in front of me. He was youngish, maybe late 20s, with kind eyes and a concerned expression. His name tag said Officer Martinez. For a moment, I thought about lying. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just waiting for my mom." But what was the point? Where was that going to get me? "I don't have a home," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. The words felt strange in my mouth, heavy and real. "I don't want to go back to that place they call a family." Officer Martinez's expression shifted from concern to alarm. He radioed for backup, asked me some questions. Was I hurt? No. Was I in danger? Not physically. Did I have anywhere to go? No. Within 30 minutes, a woman arrived. She introduced herself as Miss Rodriguez from the Department of Children and Families. She was younger than I expected, maybe early 30s, with tired eyes but a firm handshake. She didn't have the pitying expression I'd braced myself for. Instead, she looked at me with an intensity that made me feel seen for the first time in years. She sat down next to me on the bench. "Elara." "Right, that's what Officer Martinez said. Can you tell me what happened?" So I did. I told her about the fight, about being called useless, about my parents dividing up my siblings like property while deciding I wasn't worth the hassle. I told her about my broken mask, still lying on the hallway floor. My voice didn't shake. I felt numb, disconnected, like I was telling someone else's story. Miss Rodriguez listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Where do you want to go? Is there any family member you'd feel safe with?" I thought about my grandmother, but she'd died 2 years ago. My uncle lived in California, and I'd met him maybe twice. My mother's sister had cut off contact with our family years ago, and I didn't even know where she lived. "No," I said without hesitation. "I want to go anywhere that they aren't." She nodded slowly, like she understood something important. "Okay, Elara, we'll find you somewhere safe. I promise you that." I wanted to believe her. I desperately wanted to believe that someone, somewhere, would actually keep a promise to me, but I'd stopped believing in promises a long time ago. That night, I slept in a DCF emergency placement facility. It was basically a big house with several bedrooms where kids stayed temporarily, while DCF figured out where to put them. The woman who ran it was nice enough, gave me clean sheets and showed me where the bathroom was. But it felt like sleeping in a hospital, sterile and temporary and not quite real. I lay awake most of the night, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Lily waking up and finding my note, thinking about Owen coming home from wherever he'd been and learning I'd left, wondering if my parents felt anything at all, or if they were just relieved I'd solved the problem for them. The next morning, Miss Rodriguez came back. "I found a placement for you. A family in Lynn. The Carters. They have experience with foster kids. They're expecting you this afternoon." Lynn. That was about 30 minutes away from Salem. Far enough that I wouldn't run into anyone I knew. Close enough that it still felt like Massachusetts, like familiar territory. "What are they like?" I asked. "They've been fostering for 5 years. They have one biological son, Brett, who's 17. Right now they have 4 other foster kids. Mr. Carter is a veteran. Mrs. Carter stays home with the kids." It sounded normal, stable. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad. I was so wrong. The Carter house was a split-level ranch in a neighborhood that had seen better days. The lawn was patchy. The paint was peeling. And there was a chain-link fence around the yard that had rust spots. But it was the inside that really told the story. The living room was set up like a military barracks. Schedules posted on every wall. Rules typed out and laminated. A chore chart with so many names and tasks it looked like a spreadsheet. Mrs. Carter greeted us at the door with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Oh, another one. How lovely. Come in. Come in. Helada de. Mr. Carter appeared from the kitchen. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a crew cut and a way of standing that made you think of drill sergeants. Welcome to our home. We run a tight ship here. You'll learn the rules. You'll follow them. And we'll all get along just fine. There were 6 foster kids, including me, ranging in age from 8 to 16. We all shared 2 bedrooms. The boys had one room with 3 sets of bunk beds. The girls had another. I got assigned to the top bunk in the corner, the one with the mattress that sagged in the middle, and the pillow that smelled like mildew no matter how many times it was washed. That first night, a girl named Jasmine, who was 13, filled me in on the real rules. Don't trust anything they say to your social worker. They put on a show when DCF comes around. The rest of the time, this is basically a work camp. She wasn't exaggerating. We were up at 5:30 every morning, chores before school. Mr. Carter would literally blow a whistle to wake us up, like we were in basic training. We'd have 30 minutes to shower, get dressed, and complete our morning assignments. Mine included taking out the trash, cleaning the downstairs bathroom, and setting the table for breakfast. Breakfast was whatever Mrs. Carter felt like making, which was usually oatmeal or cold cereal. The portions were small. Growing kids don't need as much food as you think, she'd say with her fake sweet smile. It's wasteful to overfeed. School was a relief because it meant being away from the house for several hours. But even that came with rules. We had to come straight home. No after-school activities unless they were free and Mr. Carter approved them. No hanging out with friends. Straight home. More chores. Dinner. Homework in supervised silence. Bed by 9. The worst part was Brett. The Carter's biological son was everything his parents weren't. Where they were coldly disciplined, he was chaotically cruel. He knew he could get away with anything because his parents would never believe us over him. He'd steal food from our plates when his parents weren't looking, then complain loudly that we were eating too much. He'd accidentally knock our homework into puddles or spill drinks on our clean clothes right before school. He'd whisper vicious things when the adults were in the other room, telling us we were trash that nobody wanted, that we'd never amount to anything, that we should be grateful. His parents even let us stay in their house. I tried to keep my head down, to be invisible like I'd always been. I went to school, did my chores. I stayed quiet. But I still had my sketchbook. That was the one thing that was mine. The one piece of my old life I'd managed to carry with me. During any spare moment I could find, I'd draw. Mask designs mostly. Different faces. Different emotions. Different ways of hiding or revealing truth. 3 weeks after I'd arrived, I was sitting in the backyard during our allotted free time hour on a Saturday afternoon, working on a design for a phoenix rising from ashes. I'd been thinking about transformation, about things that die and come back stronger. The design was intricate. Probably the best thing I'd drawn in months. That's when Brett found me. "What's this crap?" he said, snatching my sketchbook before I could stop him. "Oh wow. Masks. How original. What are you? Some kind of freak?" "Give it back," I said, keeping my voice low and steady. I'd learned that showing emotion only made him worse. "Make me." He held it above his head, laughing. He was 6'2". I was 5'4". There was no way I could reach it. I tried to grab it anyway. That's when he did something I'll never forget. He opened the book to the pages with my most detailed designs, the ones I'd spent hours on, the ones that meant something, and he ripped them out, one by one, tearing them into pieces right in front of me. "Oops," he said with a grin. "Guess you'll have to start over. Freak." Something in me snapped. All the anger, all the hurt, all the rejection I'd been swallowing for years, all the new helplessness and humiliation of the past 3 weeks. It all came erupting out like a volcano. I shoved him. Hard. With every ounce of strength in my body, he stumbled backward into a pile of toys in the yard. Plastic trucks and action figures that the younger kids had been playing with. He went down hard, landing on his tailbone, and immediately started wailing like I'd attacked him with a knife. "Dad, Mom. She attacked me, she's crazy, she tried to hurt me." Mr. Carter came running out of the house, and I knew before he even reached us that this was over. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't look at the torn pages of my sketchbook scattered across the grass. He just saw me standing over his son and decided I was the problem. Get inside. Now. His voice was like gravel, like something that could scrape you raw. Pack your things. You're done here. But he destroyed my... I don't want to hear it. I don't tolerate violence in my home. You're out. Mrs. Carter appeared, putting on her sweetest voice for the neighbors who'd started to look out their windows. Oh dear. We're so sorry, Miss Rodriguez. But Alara just isn't a good fit for our loving family. We tried. We really did. But she's just too troubled. Too aggressive. We can't risk the safety of our other children. Too troubled. Too aggressive. Those were the labels I got. Not hurt. Not grieving. Not standing up for myself. Just troubled and aggressive. And now I had a record. A file somewhere that said I'd been violent toward another child. Miss Rodriguez came to pick me up that evening. She looked exhausted. Defeated. Elara, I need you to tell me what really happened. I showed her my torn sketchbook pages. I told her about Brett, about how he'd been tormenting all of us for weeks, but I could see it in her eyes. She believed me. But it didn't matter. The Carters had made their report. That would go in my file. And no matter how many foster parents said I was the problem, I'd keep getting labeled as difficult. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I'm going to try to find you a better placement. I promise. There was that word again. Promise. I was learning to hate it. The next placement was worse. The Davenports and Peabody had perfected the art of foster care fraud. They took in as many kids as the state would allow, collected the stipends, and then used us as unpaid labor for both their household and their family business. A struggling convenience store called Quick Stop. There were 7 of us foster kids, packed into a 3-bedroom house. The girls slept in what was supposed to be a dining room. Mattresses on the floor. A curtain hung from the ceiling for privacy. The boys had a similar setup in the basement. The Davenports' own kids had the actual bedrooms. We were up at 5 in the morning, doing chores before school. Laundry, dishes, scrubbing floors, making lunches for everyone, preparing dinner ingredients. After school, we went straight to the store for our shifts. Stocking shelves, mopping floors, taking out trash, organizing the back room. We never saw any money for this. The Davenports said we were working off our keep. The stipend money that was supposed to be for our care, for our clothes and school supplies and basic necessities, went straight into their pockets. When my shoes fell apart, Mrs. Davenport gave me a pair of worn-out sneakers 3 sizes too big. Make do, she said. You should be grateful we're giving you anything. But there was one good thing about the Davenport house. One light in all that darkness. Her name was Trisha. Trisha was 16. Had been in the system since she was 8. And she was the toughest person I'd ever met. She'd been at the Davenports for almost a year, which was the longest any kid stayed. She'd figured out how to survive. More than that, she'd figured out how to resist. She taught me the rules of survival. How to hide food in case the Davenports decided to punish us by cutting our portions, which they did at least once a week. How to dodge the security cameras at the store when we needed a moment to breathe. How to turn trash into something useful. She could make a blanket out of plastic bags, a pillow out of stuffed newspaper wrapped in old t-shirts, a hiding place for valuables out of a hollowed-out book. The system is broken. Kid, she told me one night as we sat in the makeshift dining room bedroom after everyone else had gone to sleep. But you're not. Remember that. You're not broken, no matter what they make you feel like. How do you do it? I asked her. How do you keep going? She pulled up her sleeve to show me a series of small tattoos she'd given herself with a safety pin and ink. They were crude but meaningful. A bird. A key. A rising sun. Every time I survive something I thought would break me, I mark it. Proof that I'm still here. Proof that I'm stronger than whatever they throw at me. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to be as strong as she was. But watching the Davenports exploit everyone in that house, seeing how the younger kids were so beaten down, they didn't even realize they deserved better. It made me angry in a way I'd never been before. It wasn't the hot, explosive anger that had made me push Brett. This was cold, calculating, determined anger. I started documenting everything. I drew pictures of us doing the work, detailed sketches with dates and times. I wrote down quotes from the younger kids about how they were treated, how they were hungry, how they hadn't seen a doctor in over a year even though some of them needed medications. I kept everything hidden in my pillowcase. But I was building a case. Trisha saw what I was doing and warned me. This is dangerous. Elara, if they catch you, you're done. They'll make sure you never get placed anywhere decent again. So we just let them keep doing this, I asked. We let them keep hurting kids. You survive first, she said. Then, when you're out, when you're safe, you fight. But not before. Not when you're still trapped. But I couldn't follow her advice. Maybe it was stupid. Maybe it was reckless. But I'd already been called useless by my parents, troubled by the Carters. And I was watching the Davenports steal from vulnerable kids every single day. If I didn't do something, who would? I started leaving my paper masks in public places around town. Little ones I could make quickly from napkins or newspaper, folded into simple shapes. I'd tuck notes inside them. Cries for help, disguised as art projects. Help us spelled out in creative ways. Quick stop exploiting foster kids hidden in the designs. I left them at the library, the grocery store, the park, anywhere people might find them and wonder. It took 3 weeks for someone to connect the dots. A teacher at school found one of my masks in the bathroom with a note inside that said, "Please look into Quick Stop Peabody." She called DCF. Miss Rodriguez showed up at the store one afternoon with another DCF worker and a police officer. They pulled each of us kids aside and interviewed us separately. The younger ones were too scared to talk, but Trisha and I told them everything. That night, back at the house, Mr. Davenport figured out it was me who'd blown the whistle. His face turned purple with rage. "You ungrateful little brat. After everything we've done for you, we took you in when nobody else wanted you." He came at me, and I genuinely thought he was going to hit me. But Trisha stepped between us. All 5'0" of her, and she stood her ground. "You touch her, and I swear I will make sure everyone knows what you've been doing. I have my own evidence. I've been documenting for months." The other kids rallied too, even the scared ones. We formed a human wall between Mr. Davenport and me. For the first time, we weren't isolated victims. We were a unit. The police came back that night. The house was in complete disarray. The investigation that followed was swift and brutal. The Davenports lost their foster license, faced charges for fraud and child labor violations. All of us kids were relocated. But here's the thing. Nobody tells you about being a whistleblower in the foster system. Even when you're right, even when you expose something wrong, you still get labeled as the troublemaker, the kid who causes problems, the one who can't just keep her head down and be grateful. My file now said I was violent and a troublemaker. I was 15 years old, and I'd been in the system for 8 months. And I already had a reputation that made foster families not want me. Miss Rodriguez tried her best. But there weren't many options left. So I ended up at a youth shelter in Boston. Not a foster home, but a transitional facility where kids stayed while DCF figured out long-term placements. It was supposed to be temporary. I ended up staying for 6 months. The shelter was rough. About 30 kids, ages 12 to 18. Most of them with serious trauma. Kids who'd been physically abused, sexually abused, abandoned, neglected. Kids with drug problems, mental health issues, aggressive behaviors. We slept in dorm-style rooms. 6 to 8 kids per room. There were staff members supposed to supervise us, but they were overwhelmed and underpaid. And mostly they just tried to keep us from killing each other. I learned to fight there, not because I wanted to, but because you had to. There was a pecking order, and you established your place early or you became everyone's target. I got into 3 fights in my first 2 weeks. I lost all of them, but I didn't back down. And eventually, people left me alone. I also learned who I could trust. There was Marcus, a 17-year-old who'd aged out of foster care but was still at the shelter because he had nowhere else to go. He was trying to get his GED and work part-time, saving up for a deposit on an apartment. He'd share his food when supplies ran low, and he broke up fights before they got too serious. There was Keisha, a 13-year-old girl who'd been sexually abused by her father and was so traumatized she barely spoke. But she'd sit near me when I was drawing. And eventually, she started drawing too. Simple things at first. Flowers and clouds. Then darker things. Images that told her story without words. And there was Deshawn, a 12-year-old kid who'd been in 8 foster homes in 4 years, who had ADHD and couldn't sit still and made jokes to hide how scared he was all the time. We became our own little family in that shelter. The rejects. The damaged ones. The kids nobody wanted. And in our free time, when we weren't at school or therapy or dealing with the daily chaos of shelter life, I made masks. I'd find materials wherever I could. Cardboard from boxes in the recycling bins. Paper bags from the grocery store across the street. Fabric scraps from a donation bin at a nearby church. Glue from the art supplies in the common room. I'd make masks for myself at first. Different faces I could hide behind. Different versions of who I might become. Then I started making them for the other kids. Simple ones at first. A superhero mask for Deshawn. A butterfly mask for Keisha. A warrior mask for Marcus. They'd wear them sometimes, playing pretend. Being someone else for a few hours. Someone powerful. Someone who mattered. The staff noticed. One of them, a woman named Alice, who worked the evening shift, asked me about it one night. "You're really talented. Elara, have you ever thought about art school?" I laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh. I'm a foster kid with a record for violence and causing trouble. I don't think art school is in my future. Don't sell yourself short, she said. I've seen a lot of kids come through here. Most of them are just trying to survive. But you're creating. That's different. That's special. I wanted to believe her. But belief was a luxury I couldn't afford anymore. Miss Rodriguez visited me regularly at the shelter. She always looked more tired than the last time. More worn down by a broken system. But she never gave up on me. "I'm still looking for the right placement," she'd say. "Someone who can see past the labels. Nobody wants a troubled teenager." I'd tell her, "You should give up. Focus on the younger kids who still have a chance." "You have a chance too," she'd insist. "You just need the right family." I stopped believing in the right family. I'd accepted that I'd probably be in group homes and shelters until I aged out of the system at 18. Then I'd be on my own. Figure things out. Survive somehow. But Miss Rodriguez was more stubborn than I gave her credit for. One day, 9 months after I'd left my parents' house, she showed up at the shelter with a look I'd never seen on her face before. "Hope, Elara, I found something. A family in Salem. They're different. The mother, Sofia Morales. She's a sculptor. Pretty well known, actually. When I told her about your masks, about your art, she asked to see them. I showed her pictures. She wants to meet you." I felt a familiar numbness settle over me. Why? Because they understand that sometimes people break, and they believe broken things can be made beautiful again. Sophia said something that stuck with me. She said, "I don't want to foster a project. I want to foster a person, and people are always works in progress." I looked at Miss Rodriguez, at this woman who'd been fighting for me, even when I'd stopped fighting for myself. What if I mess this up? What if I'm too broken? "Then you're perfect for them," she said with a small smile. "Because they specialize in putting broken things back together." I agreed to meet them. What did I have to lose? The Morales family lived in a beautiful old Victorian house in Salem, the kind you see in magazines about historic New England homes. But what struck me wasn't the house itself. It was what was inside. Art everywhere. Sculptures in the corners. Paintings on the walls. Weird installations hanging from the ceiling that made you stop and think. Light streaming through big windows, making everything glow. It felt alive in a way no house I'd ever been in had felt. Sofia Morales met us at the door. She was in her early 40s, with wild curly hair pulled back in a messy bun, paint-stained clothes, and the brightest smile I'd ever seen. "Elara Comin. Come in. I'm so glad you're here." Miguel Morales appeared from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel. He was a pediatrician. Miss Rodriguez had told me, and you could see it in his gentle presence, his calm demeanor. "Welcome to our home. Can I get you something to drink? Are you hungry?" Their son Mateo was there too. Home from college for the weekend. He was 20, studying architecture at Boston University, and he greeted me like I was already part of the family. Not a potential foster placement under evaluation. We sat in their living room, which was full of comfortable, mismatched furniture and stacks of books and art supplies. Nothing matched. But somehow it all fit together. "So," Sophia said, settling into a chair across from me, "Miss Rodriguez told us you make masks. That's incredible. Can you tell us about them?" I pulled out my sketchbook, the battered thing that had survived so much. I showed them my designs, expecting polite interest or confusion. Instead, Sophia's eyes lit up like I'd just shown her treasure. "These are extraordinary. Look at this one. Miguel. The way she's incorporated the cracks into the design rather than hiding them. That's kintsugi." "What's that?" I asked. "It's a Japanese art of repairing broken pottery with gold," she explained, her hands moving as she talked. "The philosophy is that the piece is more beautiful for having been broken, that the breakage and repair are part of its history. You're doing that with your masks. You're not trying to hide the damage. You're making it part of the story." I'd never thought of it that way. I'd just been trying to make sense of things that didn't make sense, to create something whole out of broken pieces. That first meeting lasted 3 hours. They didn't ask about my record, my reputation, the labels in my file. They asked about my art, my ideas, what I wanted to learn. They showed me Sophia's studio, a converted garage filled with her sculptures and supplies, and the smell of clay and possibility. "If you come live with us," Sophia said carefully, "this space is yours to use anytime you want. Create whatever you need to create. No judgment. No rules. Just art." "If." That word hung in the air. They hadn't decided yet. This was still an evaluation. But then Miguel said something that changed everything. "Elara, we're not looking for a perfect kid. Perfect doesn't exist. We're looking for someone who wants to be part of this family, who's willing to try, someone who's been through hard things and is still standing. That takes a kind of strength most people never develop. We see that in you." I felt something crack inside me, but not in a bad way. It was like light breaking through. Like maybe, just maybe, this could be real. Miss Rodriguez arranged for a trial placement. I moved in 2 weeks later, bringing my backpack, my sketchbook, and a small trash bag with my other belongings. Everything I owned in the world fit in one bag. Sophia showed me to my room. It wasn't a converted closet. It was a real room, with a window overlooking the garden. A desk, a bookshelf, and a bed with an actual comforter, not just sheets. The walls were painted a soft blue. "You can decorate however you want," she said. "Paint, posters, whatever makes it feel like yours." I set my bag down and just stood there, not quite believing this was real, that this was where I'd be sleeping, that nobody was going to take it away. The first few weeks were strange. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for them to realize I was too damaged, too difficult. I followed every rule perfectly. I did my chores without being asked. I was polite and quiet, and tried to take up as little space as possible. Sophia noticed. "Elara, honey, you don't have to be perfect here. You're allowed to relax. You're allowed to take up space." But I didn't know how to do that. I'd spent so long being invisible or being a problem that I didn't know how to just be a person. Then one night, about a month after I'd moved in, I had a nightmare. I woke up gasping, convinced I was back at the Davenport house, that the comfortable room had been a dream. I was hyperventilating, couldn't breathe. I couldn't think straight. There was a soft knock on my door. "Elara, are you okay?" It was Miguel. I wanted to say yes. "I'm fine. Don't worry about me." But I couldn't speak. He opened the door slowly, giving me space. "You're safe," he said quietly. "You're in Salem. You're in our home. Nobody's going to hurt you." Sophia appeared behind him with a glass of water and a blanket. They didn't make me talk about it. They just sat with me until I could breathe again, until the panic subsided, until I remembered where I was. This happens sometimes. Miguel said gently. After trauma. Your brain is still processing everything you've been through. It's okay to not be okay. That was the first time I really let them in. The first time I believed they might actually mean it when they said I was safe. School was another challenge. I enrolled at Salem High School as a sophomore. I was behind in almost every subject because my education had been so disrupted. Miguel hired a tutor to help me catch up. Sophia worked with me on my art. Mateo, when he came home on weekends, helped me with math and gave me pep talks about not giving up. I started making friends. Slowly. There was a girl in my English class named Hannah who invited me to eat lunch with her group. They were theater kids. Weird and loud and accepting. For the first time in my life, I had friends who actually wanted to hang out with me. I also started working seriously on my masks again. Sophia had set up a corner of her studio for me. With all the supplies I needed, she taught me about different techniques, different materials. How to think about art, not just as decoration, but as communication. We worked together on fixing my wolf mask. The one I'd dropped the night I left my parents' house. I'd been carrying the pieces in my backpack all this time, unable to throw them away, but not knowing how to fix them. The two halves were cracked. The details smudged. The ears bent. Sophia showed me how to use gold leaf and resin to mend the cracks, making them shine instead of trying to hide them. We worked on it for weeks, carefully rebuilding, reinforcing, transforming. You see, she said, as we applied the final layer of gold. The mask is stronger now than it was before it broke. The gold isn't just decorative, it's reinforcement. The cracks are filled with something precious. That's what trauma can do. If you let it, if you transform it, it can make you stronger in the broken places. I hung the repaired wolf mask on my bedroom wall, those gold seams catching the light every morning when I woke up. For the first time in over a year, I felt something like hope. For 6 months, life was good, better than good. It was like living in a different universe. I went to school, came home to a family who actually wanted me there, spent my afternoons in the studio creating. My grades improved. I made art that I was proud of. I started to believe that maybe I could have a future. Then my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize with a local area code. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Elara, sweetheart. My mother's voice. I hadn't heard it in over a year. It made my blood run cold. How did you get this number? I'm your mother. I have my ways. Her voice had that syrupy quality she used when she wanted something. Honey, I've been thinking about you so much. I miss you. I know I made mistakes. Terrible mistakes. But I've changed. David and I are in a much better place now. We're seeing a counselor, working on ourselves. And Lily misses you so much. She asks about you all the time. I felt like I was drowning. What do you want? I want my daughter back. I want us to be a family again. I saw that you're living with some people in Salem. Artists. From what I hear. That's wonderful. Honey, I'm so glad you found somewhere stable. But you belong with your real family. We could work something out. Maybe Sophia Morales could still mentor you even if you lived with us. I'm sure she'd understand that blood is thicker than water. The manipulation was so obvious it almost made me laugh. Almost. You called me useless. You said the state could deal with me. Those were your words. I was upset. Going through a divorce. Not thinking straight. You know I didn't mean that. You meant it enough that you never looked for me. Never visited. Never called in over a year. There was a pause. Then her voice hardened. I'm trying to do the right thing here. Don't make this difficult. I hung up. My hands were shaking. Sophia found me sitting on my bed, staring at the phone. What's wrong? I told her about the call. She listened without interrupting, her expression growing more serious. Do you want to talk to her again? She asked. No, but I don't think she's going to give up. I was right. The next day, my father called. His approach was different, more practical, more calculating. Elara, I've been following your progress. Owen told me you're doing well in school. That's good. Smart girl. Always knew you had potential. He paused. Owen got into MIT. Did you hear? Full scholarship. I'm very proud. Rebecca and I have been talking. and we think it would be good for you to be part of our family. The twins need a big sister, and I could set up a studio space for you. I have some connections in the art world through Rebecca's family. Could really help you develop your career. Career. Like I was a business investment. Why now, I asked. Why do you suddenly care? I've always cared. I was just dealing with a lot. The divorce, starting a new family. But things have settled down now. We have room for you. You told Mom to let the state deal with me. I heard you. He was quiet for a moment. I was angry that night. Said things I shouldn't have. But I'm trying to make amends now. Don't you think people deserve second chances? Some people, I said. Not you. I hung up on him too, but they didn't stop. Over the next 2 weeks, I got calls, texts, messages through Owen and Lily. My mother sent flowers. My father sent a check for $500. They were circling like sharks who'd smelled blood in the water, because they'd been keeping tabs on me. They'd seen the small article in the Salem Gazette about Sophia's community art class and her talented foster daughter. They'd heard Miguel was a successful pediatrician at a well-known hospital. They knew the Morales family had connections, had status, had opportunities, and suddenly, now that I might be worth something, now that I had access to people who mattered, they wanted me back. Sophia and Miguel sat with me through all of it. They never told me what to do, but they made it clear where they stood. Your talent isn't a bargaining chip. Sophia told me, it's yours. What you do with it, who you share it with, that's your decision. Miguel added, real family doesn't abandon you when things get hard and show up when things get easy. Real family shows up for the hard parts. That's what love is. I thought about it for exactly one night. Then I wrote 2 letters, one to each parent. I spent hours on them, choosing every word carefully. To my mother, you had your chance to be my parent when I needed you. When I was scared and alone and breaking apart, you chose not to take it. You didn't just fail to be there. You actively pushed me away. Now I'm not broken anymore, and you don't get to swoop in and claim the repaired version. I found my family. They saw me when I was nothing but cracks and empty spaces, and they loved me anyway. That's what family means. You'll never understand that. Don't contact me again. To my father, you calculated my worth and found me lacking. That was your choice. Now I know my own worth. And it has nothing to do with your approval or your connections. I don't need your money. I don't need your studio space. I don't need anything from you. I needed a father 15 months ago. That position has been filled by someone who actually earned the title. You're too late. I mailed both letters and changed my phone number. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. 2 months later, on a Tuesday morning, Miss Rodriguez showed up at school during my lunch period. She looked grim. The principal called me to his office, and I knew before I even got there that something bad had happened. Elara, Miss Rodriguez said, your biological parents have filed a petition with family court. They're claiming they've reformed and rehabilitated. They want custody back. They're arguing that blood family should take precedence over foster placement. I felt the world tilt. Can they do that? They can file. Whether they'll win is another question. She looked exhausted. They've hired a lawyer. A good one. They're presenting themselves as reformed parents who deserve a second chance. Miguel and Sophia were there within the hour, pulled out of work by the principal's emergency call. They sat on either side of me in the conference room, solid and steady. We're not going to let this happen, Miguel said firmly. We're going to fight. They hired a lawyer too, Gloria Chen, a family law attorney who'd been practicing for 30 years. She met with all of us that evening at the Morales house, going over strategy. Here's what we're up against, she said, spreading papers across the dining room table. Richard and Eliza are presenting as 2 separate cases. Your mother wants you to live with her, and her new husband David. Your father wants you to live with him and his new wife Rebecca. Both are claiming they've done therapy. They've changed. They regret their past actions. They abandoned her, Sophia said, her voice tight with anger. They didn't just fail. They actively pushed her away. I know, Gloria said. And that's what we're going to prove. But we need to be prepared. They're going to paint themselves as victims of circumstance, people who made mistakes under stress but have since reformed. They're going to have character witnesses. They're going to look sympathetic. What do we do? I asked. My voice small. We tell the truth. Gloria said. Your truth. The whole story. And we proved that the Morales family isn't just a foster placement. You're building a real family here. The court date was set for 6 weeks away. Those were the longest 6 weeks of my life. I couldn't focus on school. I could barely eat. I'd lie awake at night imagining what would happen if the judge sided with my biological parents, if I had to go back. If everything I'd built crumbled away. Sophia found me one night, sitting on the floor of her studio at 2 a.m, surrounded by half-finished masks. Can't sleep. I shook my head. She sat down next to me, looking at the masks I'd been working on. They were dark, angry things, faces twisted with fear and rage. This is how you're feeling. I can't go back to them. I can't. I'll run away. I'll disappear. I can't. Hey. She put her arm around me. We're going to fight. With everything we have. You're not going back. You're our daughter. That's not foster placement talk. That's truth. You're our daughter and we're not giving up. I wanted to believe her. But the system had failed me so many times before. The investigation period was invasive and exhausting. Social workers visited both of my biological parents' homes, interviewed them, assessed their living situations. They visited our home too, interviewed me separately, asked me what I wanted. My mother's lawyer tried to paint me as brainwashed by the Morales family. Isn't it possible? He suggested during my interview that you've been influenced by your current placement to think negatively about your mother. I was there. I said flatly. I heard what she said. I lived through her choosing my brother over me. Nobody brainwashed me. I remember. My father's lawyer took a different approach, suggesting that teenagers are naturally rebellious and that my desire to stay with the Morales family was just typical teenage rejection of authority. I'm not rejecting authority, I told her. I'm rejecting people who hurt me and are only coming back because I might be useful to them now. Both sides gathered evidence and witnesses. My parents produced therapy records, letters of recommendation from colleagues, statements from Lily and Owen saying they wanted me back in the family. The Morales family produced something different. Trisha came forward, now 19, and working as a youth advocate. She submitted a statement about how I'd exposed the Davenport abuse, how I'd tried to protect other kids. Alice from the shelter submitted records of my artwork and behavior there. My teachers from Salem High wrote letters about my progress. Hannah and my other friends submitted statements about how I'd changed since living with the Morales family. And then there was Miss Rodriguez. She compiled every document from my case, every report, every note. She created a timeline showing exactly when my parents could have reached out and chose not to. She found records showing they'd been informed of every placement I'd been in and had never responded. The court hearing was scheduled for a Thursday in March. It was supposed to be a closed hearing. Just the judge, the lawyers, and the relevant parties. But word got out somehow, and there were reporters outside the courthouse. Inside, the courtroom was cold and formal. My mother was there with David, her new husband, dressed like she was going to church. My father was there with Rebecca and their twin boys, who were 5 now, looking like the picture of a reformed family man. They both gave testimony. My mother cried as she talked about her regrets, about how the divorce had broken her, about how she'd been in a dark place, but had found her way back. I want my daughter back, she said, tears streaming down her face. I want to make up for lost time. I want to be the mother she deserves. My father was more measured, more controlled. He talked about his growth, his therapy, his stable life now. Alara is a talented young woman with a bright future. I want to provide for her. I want to give her opportunities. I have the means and the desire to be her father again. Their lawyers were good. They made them sound reasonable, remorseful, reformed. Then it was our turn. Gloria called Trisha first. She testified about the Davenports, about my character, about how I'd put myself at risk to protect other kids. Elara Vance has more integrity than most adults I know, Trisha said. She didn't cause trouble for the sake of it. She stood up for people who couldn't stand up for themselves. That's not a troubled kid. That's a hero. She called Miss Rodriguez next. She went through my entire case file, methodically showing every time my parents had been notified, every opportunity they'd had to engage. These parents had multiple chances, Miss Rodriguez said. They received letters informing them of Alara's placements. They were invited to case conferences. They were told they could visit. They chose not to participate until Alara was placed with a prominent family. The timing is not coincidental. She called Alice from the shelter. She called my teachers. She called Sophia and Miguel, who both testified about my progress, my healing, my growth. Then Gloria called me. I walked to the stand feeling like I might throw up. I'd brought my wolf mask with me, the one with the gold-seamed cracks running through it. I set it on the ledge in front of me where everyone could see it. Helada, Gloria said gently. Can you tell the judge about that mask? I took a deep breath. I made this mask the night I left my parents' house. I was 14. I was working on it in my room when I heard my parents fighting. They were dividing up my siblings. My brother was going with my mother. My sister was going with my father. And they decided I wasn't worth the trouble. My father called me useless. He said the state could deal with me. My mother didn't even argue. I picked up the mask, traced the gold lines with my finger. I dropped the mask when I heard that. It broke. I took the pieces with me when I ran away that night. I carried them for over a year, through 3 foster placements and a homeless shelter. I didn't know how to fix it. Then I met Sophia and Miguel Morales. I looked at them, sitting in the front row. Sophia was crying. Miguel was gripping her hand. They didn't try to glue it back together and pretend it had never broken. They taught me that the breaking itself could be part of the art, that I could be stronger because of the cracks, not in spite of them. They taught me about kintsugi, this Japanese technique where you repair broken pottery with gold. You don't hide the damage. You make it beautiful. You make it part of the story. I turned to face my parents. They were both staring at the mask, their faces unreadable. You want me back because you think I might be worth something now. Because I'm living with a successful family. Because I'm making art that people notice. Because I might have opportunities. But the Morales family wanted me when I was nothing but broken pieces. When I had a record for being troubled and violent. When I was just another foster kid nobody else wanted. That's the difference. That's why they're my family, and you're not. I held up the mask so the gold caught the light. You had your chance to repair this. You chose not to take it. Someone else did the work. Someone else filled the cracks with gold. And now you want to claim the finished product. But it doesn't work that way. I set the mask down and looked directly at the judge. Your Honor, I don't want to go back to my biological parents. I want to stay with the Morales family. They've given me something my birth parents never did. They've given me a home. The judge took 2 weeks to make her decision. Those 2 weeks felt like 2 years. I tried to go back to normal life, but everything felt suspended. Waiting. Finally, we got the call. Time to hear the ruling. Back in the courtroom, the judge looked at all of us with an expression I couldn't read. She'd reviewed all the evidence, all the testimony, all the evaluations. This has been a complex case, she began. I've carefully considered all the testimony and evidence presented by both sides. My heart was pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. The biological parents have shown some evidence of reform. They've completed therapy. They've stable homes. They present well. No. However, I held my breath. However, family is not simply biology. It is not about who wants you when it's convenient. It is about who shows up. Who does the work? Who earns the right to call themselves family? She looked at my parents, her expression stern. Mr. Vance, Ms. Hoffman, you had many opportunities to engage with your daughter's case over the past 15 months. You were notified of every placement. You were invited to participate. You chose not to, until you learned she was placed with a family of means and status. That speaks to your motivation. And it is not a motivation that puts Alara's welfare first. She looked at me. Alara has made remarkable progress in the Morales home. She's thriving academically, socially, and emotionally. The bond she's formed with them is real and significant. To disrupt that for the sake of biological connection alone would be harmful. I started to cry. Sophia grabbed my hand. Therefore, the petitions for custody by both Richard Vance and Eliza Hoffman are denied. Furthermore, I'm approving the Morales family's petition to adopt Ilara Vance. This case is closed. The gavel came down with a crack that sounded like freedom. I became Ilara Morales on that Tuesday in March, 3 weeks before my 16th birthday. Miguel cried. Sophia beamed. Mateo drove home from college to be there and gave me a noogie and called me Little Sis officially for the first time, and I felt like I could finally breathe. Like the weight I'd been carrying for so long had finally lifted. My biological parents left the courthouse without saying a word to me. I never saw them again. But the story doesn't end there. Because winning the right to be loved was just the beginning. Now I had to figure out what to do with that second chance. With Sophia's guidance and support, I started developing my mask making seriously. Not just as therapy anymore, but as art. As a business. As a way to help others the way I'd been helped. I took every art class my high school offered. I entered competitions. I started an Instagram account to showcase my work. And slowly, people started noticing. Local galleries reached out. I did a show at a community center, selling masks to raise money for foster care organizations. I was on the local news. By the time I graduated high school, I had a portfolio good enough to apply to art programs at several universities. I got accepted to Mass Art with a partial scholarship. Between that, financial aid, and Miguel and Sophia's help, I could actually go. But I also had another plan. During my senior year, I'd been teaching art classes at the youth shelter where I'd stayed. Seeing those kids, the ones who reminded me of who I'd been, it ignited something in me. I wanted to do more than just make art. I wanted to create a space where kids like us could heal through creativity. So I applied for small business grants. I crowdfunded. I saved every penny from selling my masks. And when I turned 18, with Sophia as my business partner and advisor, I opened a studio. I called it Broken Souls. It was small at first. Just a rented space in a converted warehouse in Salem. But it was ours. A place where kids who'd been through the foster system, kids who'd been abused or neglected or abandoned, could come and create. No charge. No judgment. Just art supplies and guidance and a safe space to be broken and healing at the same time. I taught mask making, painting, sculpture. Sophia taught ceramics and invited other artists from the community to volunteer. We created a program called Masks of Hope where kids could tell their stories through art. And then we'd display their work in galleries around Boston. The local media picked up on it. First, just the Salem Gazette with a small feature. Then the Boston Globe ran a major story about me. From foster care to art advocate, Ilara Morales builds Hope for Broken Souls. They interviewed me, Sophia, several of the kids from the program. The article went viral. Suddenly, I was getting messages from all over the country. Donations poured in. Other artists wanted to volunteer. Foster kids and former foster kids reached out to share their stories, to thank me, to ask for advice. And then, 3 months after the Globe article, on a Thursday afternoon when I was working with a group of teenagers on papier-mâché techniques, the studio door opened and my mother walked in. So here's my question for you. What are you going to do with your cracks? Are you going to hide them? Pretend they don't exist? Or are you going to fill them with gold and let them shine? Because I promise you, there's beauty in the breaking. There's power in the healing. And there's strength in refusing to let your past define your future. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt broken, if you've ever had to rebuild yourself from nothing, hit that like button. Subscribe so you can hear more stories of survival and strength. And please, drop a comment. Tell me your story. Tell me about your cracks and how you're filling them with gold. Because I read every single one. And I want you to know that you're not alone. We're all broken souls here, shining together,